Lying deep at the heart of the old world, the Empire is arguably the most powerful realm of men. Beset on all sides by the ferocious and the unholy, they stand strong using gun, sword, and skill to hold back the bloodshed and protect their blessed nation. We'll talk a bit about the Empire as a whole today, but our main focus lies with the founder and creator of the Empire, the warrior god Sigmar. In the early days of the Empire's history, the Dwarven and Elven wars were finding their ends. The Dwarfs retreated back to their mountain holds, but their strength was weakened through war, and they were at risk from Goblin and Orc invaders. As these greenskins fought their way across the World's Edge Mountain and into Dwarven lands, the tribal groups of men migrated south, fighting the greenskins that pursued them with great ferocity. Somewhere along this path of warfare, the dwarfs and humans found common ground amidst a common enemy, and forged an alliance that proved profitable for all parties. Sharing knowledge for manpower, the humans learnt of smithing and metalworking from their new allies, and the dwarfs gained more fighting power with which to retake their ancestral homes. These deals and bargains were struck with tribal warlords or those who had gathered many to rally behind their might, with no established banner binding these scatterings of humans in this time. One of these such warriors was Sigmar himself. His birth heralded by the passing of a twin-tailed comet, Sigmar was the firstborn son of the Umberogan chieftain. A respected warrior of great nobility, courage and strength, Sigmar led forces into battle against the orcs and goblins by the age of 15, earning himself a legendary status amongst his people. He was amongst those who made deals and friends with the dwarven people and assisted their stout warriors in taking the fight to the green-skinned menace. As the fighting continued and years passed, the greenskins became more and more cunning, going so far as to capture the High King of the Dwarves himself, Kurgan Ironbeard. As the goblins led their captives through the deep forest, they learnt they too were the prey of a hunting warband. As luck would have it, Sigmar and his warriors had been tracking the orcs and goblins for a while, and struck out at them as they carted their dwarven prisoners through the woodland. Slaying the greenskins and burning their corpses upon a large pyre, Sigmar released the High King and his men. In gratitude, Kurgan gave Sigmar an heirloom of his family, a magical warhammer named Galmaraz, meaning skull splitter in the dwarven tongue. Sigmar accepted this most generous gift and became steadfast allies in an instant with the High King, the two promising to aid each other in the wars against the orcs. This bond would come to strengthen over many battles as Sigmar wielded Galmaraz in countless fights, destroying ranks of goblin fighters, smiting them with arcs of lightning-infused blows from his grand hammer. Such was his glory spread that his fury in battle earned him the nickname Heldenhammer, the Hammer of Goblins. When his father died, Sigmar took his place as the leader of the Umberogans and took this new responsibility to heart. Seeing the fractured tribes of his people, Sigmar set about uniting all of the tribes of men under one unified banner. Either through cooperation or conquest, Sigmar swept through the lands like a force of nature. It took years of bloody battles and hard-won diplomacy, but he would see his vision come to fruition. Sigmar had a dream of a land united under his rule, free of the greenskin menace that he had spent his entire adult life hunting. He would have his people brought together and governed by fair laws and protected by a strong, disciplined fighting force. Sigmar was a powerful and charismatic leader, and eventually 12 of the great tribes of men had sworn their oaths to him, binding themselves to his cause. Along with his dwarven allies, this newly banded force drove the orcs and goblins from the lands west of the World's Edge Mountains, returning them back to whence they had came. With the greenskin menace dealt with, Sigmar gave the remaining tribes who had not banded under him a choice. This land now belonged to his new empire, and they must either join him or leave. Some fled to the inhospitable Grey Mountains, where others fled north, such as the Norse tribes. With peace and unity brought to reality, Sigmar began to build and stabilise his power, becoming the undisputed ruler of the lands between the World's Edge Mountains and the Great Ocean. In time, the orcs and goblins dared to cross back over the World Edge Mountains, entering into the Dwarven Holds once more. This time, rather than rely on scattered bands of tribes, the High King sent word to Sigmar, calling upon him for aid once more. Sigmar proved that faith in him was well placed, and gathered his chieftains together to organise for war. Not only did the tribes respect an alliance with the Dwarven people, it also made sense to aid them from a selfish point of view. If the dwarves were to fall, there would be no barrier between the fledgling empire of man and the hordes of greenskins marching over the mountains. His forces amassed, Sigmar joined King Kurgan's march through Blackfire Pass. This crossing through the mountains was one of few safe passages to march significant forces over the mountains, and so it was here where the Alliance and the Orcs met. Picking this site as their battleground, the numbers of the greenskin, bolstered as they were with trolls and giants, would not be of such a great advantage. Narrower paths and the dwarves' experience with this landscape meant that the less numerous Alliance forces met the greenskins on equal footing. For many brutal hours did the forces clash, the howling green tide rising up to crash against the shield walls like waves upon stone. To their credit, the dwarves and men stood their ground, splintered shields and bloodied blades pushing back the relentless forces of the orcs. Sigmar himself took to battle in full force, showing his men exactly how he earned the name Heldenhammer as he brought a strength and fury to bear that would have rivaled the warrior god Ulrich himself. No foe could stand before him, and a score of goblins, orcs and even wyverns were felled by the mighty warrior. Alongside Sigmar, champions of the Empire such as Ulfdar the Berserker, Marbad of the Endals, and Queen Freya of the Azoborns made their names into legends on that grim, bloody day. As the greenskins broke and their lines began to retreat, Sigmar led the pursuing forces to cut down their fleeing enemies. Driving deep into their fleeing ranks, the day was won with the spilling of orc blood, the bodies of goblins, giants and orcs lining the blood-stained stone of Blackfire Pass. The Dwarven holds now saved from destruction, Sigmar returned to his new lands. All had seen Sigmar lead this grand victory and the warrior spirit that dwelt within him. None then argued when the High Priest of Ulrich named Sigmar as Emperor of Man, Lord of all the lands between the Grey Mountains in the south and the Middle Mountains in the north. Even King Kurgan blessed this grand honour, gifting his old friend with a magnificent dwarf-forged crown to mark his station. As the two swore to each other oaths of loyalty and brotherhood for all time, Kurgan gave Sigmar one final gift for saving his people. He instructed his runesmith, Alaric the Mad, to smith 12 magical swords, known as the Runefangs, to be given to each of the tribal chieftains. These swords would come to be the marks of office for the 12 elector counts of the Empire. Not only did the coronation of Sigmar mark the beginning of the Empire truly, it also began the imperial calendar. From this first day did Sigmar rule justly and courageously, granting land to the 12 tribal chieftains to govern and manage. These 12 chieftains had swore allegiance to Sigmar long ago, and continued to support him as they rose to the occasion of this new nation. Each swore an oath of loyalty to Sigmar, bonding them and their heirs to the service of the Empire. For the next 50 years, Sigmar watched over his empire as villages blossomed and bloomed into towns and cities. The people multiplied, the greenskins were periodically pushed back from another invasion attempt, and raiders and tribesmen were taught the folly of rampaging across Sigmar's lands. There is little kept in the way of history from this time, as the Dwarfs' records were more than content to record their own matters, and the men of the Empire were too occupied with building and holding their new land than to record their exploits in anything more than song or spoken legend. All that is known for certain about these times is that Sigmar eventually put his crown aside and travelled to Karaz-Akarak to meet with his old friend Kurgan. Eventually, the Counts of the Empire would elect a new emperor to lead them, but the true fate of Sigmar remains an uncertainty to the people. All that is known is what followed his departure. As time passed, the legends of Sigmar and tales of his heroic exploits became gospel, the divine leader who united the tribes and brought peace and stability to a new empire. Temples and shrines grew, and the cult of Sigmar developed as generation and generation were taught of the God King Sigmar and his divine powers. Soon, the faith in Sigmar became one of the most powerful followings in the kingdom, and the hero of Blackfire Pass took his place amongst the pantheon of the old gods of the Empire. It's said that Sigmar now battles with the Dark Gods, protecting his people from them as he empowers his Sigmarite priests with the power to continue his fight in the realms of men. He is a classic and true hero, and I can see why not only is there great love for him in the Empire, but in the Warhammer community as well. A true tale of zero to hero, he even has his own game system named after him now, to go along with the entire brand being named after his hammer Galmaraz. You know, his Warhammer. It's been great to dive into his old world lore and discover who this now well-known figure was before the end times and the events of Age of Sigmar. If you've enjoyed the journey and don't want to miss any more Warhammer fantasy lore, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps us to continue what we're doing. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.